Sapiophile. Noun. One who is attracted to intelligence. Join us, three fun-loving lovers of knowledge who are ready to dig into your favorite topics with our very own nerdy diatribes, words of wisdom, and takes on life as millennials. Welcome to the Sapiophiles.
I've always been fascinated with the idea of interactions between human beings based on personality types, whether it be the Strengths Finder by Tom Rath or the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator tests, or one of my new favorites because I was introduced to it via Chelsea, the 5 love languages. So I just thought it would be an interesting topic to discuss on the podcast, not just as it applies to romantic love, but also as it applies to love amongst family and friends and just how you express love in all capacities and senses of the word. So Chelsea, I'll pass it on to you.
Absolutely. Well, hi everybody and welcome back to our podcast. Today we're talking the 5 love languages, as Kayla mentioned. So the 5 love languages are a series of ways that people interact with each other. And it's a book by Gary Chapman. I happen to have the book with me. And it divides people into 5 types in the way that they give and receive love most effectively, what they need to feel appreciated, and the way that they're most proficient in showing their love to people. So the 5 love languages are quality time, words of affirmation, gifts, physical touch, and acts of service. So a little overview on what those mean. Quality time is basically undivided attention. So anytime your partner can give you some undivided attention and focus, be there with you in the moment, be present, is helpful for a quality time individual. Touch is anything physical touch, and it doesn't just relate to sexual touch. It relates to any type of physicality. So people who like to give hugs, people who like to put like a hand on your shoulder when they talk to you, they express and receive love through touch. And touch is interesting because it's actually the first language that most of us learn as babies. And there have been psychological studies that if people are not held as babies or not touched appropriately, they don't develop an appropriate relationship to touch, that affects them later in life. So whether that becomes their love language or not, I'm not sure, but it's an interesting one to think about psychologically. Words of affirmation is helping people feel appreciated by acknowledging what they do for you, acknowledging their success and their strengths, and telling them in words how much you care about them, how much you love them. Acts of service is selfless acts. So acts of service is basically doing something for somebody else because you want to ease the burdens in their life. So for some people, this manifests as, I'm going to clean the house so that you don't have to when you get home. Or I'm going to make appointments for you so you don't have to worry about it. I'm going to sacrifice my time and energy to do something, whether or not it's pleasant for me, because it'll make your life easier. And gifts is giving and receiving physical tokens of appreciation. And it's not necessarily materialism. It's just appreciating the thought that goes into picking out something for somebody else. And most people express love in more than one way, but we all have a primary love language, something that means the most to us and that we're most proficient in expressing our love in. So that's a basic overview of the 5 love languages. If you're not familiar with the 5 love languages, you should check out the book and you should take the quiz online. You can figure out what is most important to you, how you most effectively express your emotions, and how to better appreciate the people in your life. Okay, so Miss Kayla and Miss Marissa, what are your thoughts on the love languages and, your love languages? How do you give and receive love most effectively?
So I took this test recently. I had taken it a few years ago, and I received a slightly different result this time based on where I am in my life now. My 2 strongest love languages have always been quality time and words of affirmation. Shocker for anybody that knows I'm an English major. Those have always been my 2 strongest. A few years ago when I took this, words of affirmation was number 1, and now quality time has switched to number 1. But they're both very, very strong.
So you're kind of divergent in your love languages.
I am divergent in my love languages. And I also think it's interesting that there are things that I respond to. Like, I really enjoy spending quality time with whoever I'm with, whether it's friends, family, a significant other. And I do respond well to people saying, like, even when I'm, like, running races, like, good job, keep it up. So, like, that, it totally rings true with the words of affirmation. But I feel as though I do a lot of acts of service and gifts when I'm doing stuff for others.
So you express differently than you receive?
Right.
Cool.
So I found that interesting, and I was thinking about that a little earlier this evening, and just how, I don't want to say strange, because, like, all human beings are strange in our own unique, wonderful ways, but it's just kind of mind-boggling to think about that the things that I like to receive as far as love languages are very different than what I oftentimes give out. So
interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Marissa, what about you?
So I took the test very recently, actually. I took it this morning. And the one that came on top for me was quality time. Mm-hmm. And then after that was physical touch.
Yeah. That's like hugs and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And then words of affirmation. Those were only like 1 point apart, those two. But quality time was the highest. So I had a 9 for quality time, and then, like, I think a 7 for physical touch, and then, like, a 6 for words of affirmation. So, like, those 3 are, like, really close.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyone who knows me knows that I very much am someone who loves to show, like, affection. I love giving hugs to people. I just think that there's something so powerful in the act of giving someone a hug. Just for example, it cheers you up, it cheers the person up, it just lets them know you're caring about them. And just other ways of physical touch as well, like hand holding, putting your arm around somebody. I think that's just a nice way of showing affection as well. There's, in my mind, nothing better than spending quality time with your loved one or significant other, you know, uninterrupted, where it's just the two of you. Even if you don't even have to be doing anything, you just be hanging out.
Definitely, I agree with that. So I am not divergent at all. I am very, very strongly quality time. So we all kind of have that piece in common. I've taken the quiz at different times in my life. I took it again today in preparation for this podcast. And my quality time is a 12. So that is huge for me. So my biggest thing is, if you do nothing else for me, show up when you say you're going to show up, listen to what I'm saying, and just be there. That's it. The next highest one, I had a tie for second place. I had physical touch and acts of service. So physical touch they were both a 6, so they're half of what quality time is. I appreciate those. However, I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with how this came up, because sometimes I feel like I misinterpret acts of service. Maybe I appreciate different than I give, something like that. So physical touch and acts of service were both 6. Words of affirmation was a 5, and gifts was a 2.
Can I just say something about gifts? When I was taking the quiz, I don't know if it was just me misinterpreting it, but it made it, I thought that it was presented in a way that it sounded like you were only interested in material objects. And I know that's not what they meant, but sometimes it was like, oh, would you rather spend time with someone you love, or would you rather have them, like, send you flowers? Or it's like, well, you can't really compare that. Everybody likes gifts, and there's nothing wrong with getting gifts, but I don't know. It just sounded way too materialistic. I don't know that my score is pretty accurate, because I'm someone, like, I always think of others, and I'm the type of person, I will leave someone, like, a little gift or a little note saying, oh, thinking of you today, whether it's for a reason or nothing. Like, I do little things like that, and I don't mind getting that, but I don't know that that was truly, like, reflected in my score. Like, that was lower, and I think had the questions been worded more clearly and concisely, accurately, it would have been a little bit different.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that it has a lot to do with the thought. You appreciate the thought someone put into something. Yes, Kayla.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People that don't are just listening to us. We're on video chat, and I'm raising my hand. That's what I do. I would agree the quiz was it made a lot of the gift questions sound shallow, which bothered me in a sense because, I mean, one of the things that I do, like, for example, I'm the maid of honor in my friend's wedding coming up, and all the, her parents and the groom's parents and all the bridal party and the groomsmen all threw a wedding shower for them. One of our tasks was to pick up bottles of wine for them. So I ordered wine from a vineyard that we had gone to as a group in Cape Cod, and special ordered it. And that would be considered that's what I consider the love language of gifts, because I took the time to remember a memory and give them a gift that meant something. Yes. And I feel like those questions didn't reflect that type of gift giving, because I'm super into that.
And I appreciate that as well. I would be interested to know what Gary Chapman's love language is, because it kind of seems like perhaps he doesn't quite understand the gift love language. He acknowledges that it exists and has met people that it's important for, but perhaps he doesn't quite understand it because maybe that is his lowest.
That's probably, in my mind, the one love language that's two-sided, because you can like to be on the receiving end or the giving end or vice versa. It might not be the same. For me, I love giving gifts and making a person feel good, cheering them up. Just if I see something that I know someone's going to love, I'll give it to that person if it's within my means. But I'm not someone who necessarily needs to have gifts showered upon me to make me feel loved and valued and appreciated.
Yeah.
So it's just there's two sides with that issue. And I don't think it was appropriately reflected in the quiz.
Yeah. I think it's a disparity between the language that you speak, the language that you give love in, and the language that you best receive love in. So I think there's that too. And I mean, gifts came up the lowest for me, but I do that too. Kay, recently you went through something and I sent you a box of things, and gifts is coming up as the lowest for me, but that was just, okay, have to cheer her up. Here's some things that I know about her that would be cool, and I'll put them in a box.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to those of us who might be a little more empathic, or people that understand the people around them, how many times do we just automatically switch to another person's love language once we get to know them well enough?
Yeah.
I know that there are people that I would automatically do an act of service for because I know that's what they like, and it cracks me up. When you guys are talking about hugs, and
you're not a huggy person.
This is not like
hugs, but I will hug my friends when they need me, because I know that's their love language. But that's the lowest on mine, and it's not to say that with a significant other I don't like intimacy. That's completely not true. But I'm just not expressive with my physical love language.
I think we should also clarify that the touch love language is actually, it has very little to do with sexual intimacy. That's something that's a separate part of human nature. Touch is more, let me hold your hand, let me put my arm around you, here's a hug.
We're not including that as its love language. It's not quality time, gifts and sex. But anyways, no, I am not when if I'm eating something at a booth and someone puts their arm around me while I'm trying to eat spaghetti, I'm like, what are you doing? I'm eating my spaghetti. So.
Yeah. I feel like I've dated a lot of touch people, so I've gotten more accustomed to it in the dating sense. There's a difference between touch and PDA, and I think that line needs to be clarified. Touch is I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to put my, hand on your knee or something. I'm going to put my arm around you. That's all nice. Fine and good. Yeah, I like that. But
me too.
There's also I'm just going to grab you and kiss you. And, it's nobody else is in the room and we're in public. That's different.
I do feel to a point, if I was walking on a sunset beach with someone, I'd like to hold their hand. There have been times when I first started dating someone and someone went for the handhold, and I was like, whoa. My whole body was like, whoa. What do you, no.
So we haven't really talked about acts of service too much.
Yes, so let's touch on all of them. So acts of service is interesting. It came up in the middle for me, although I think I sometimes have misinterpreted acts of service in my past. So acts of service is basically doing something to ease the burden on somebody else's life. And I was actually thinking about my parents. And I feel like my mom is very quality time like I am. And my dad is very acts of service. So it took longer in my life to connect with my dad than it did with my mom because that wasn't something I primarily spoke. So whereas my mom spent her time with me, my dad was busy working and making sure I had lots of opportunities. So I feel like that's the difference between a quality time love language and an acts of service love language. And it took a while for me to understand the not being there, the physically, he worked very hard. He's a very hardworking person. And I think that for a lot of my childhood, I misinterpreted it. And that's, something that I realized that he did show love just as much. He just showed it in a different language. Yeah.
In a different way.
So I think that acts of service it's a very important one to some people. It's hard for me sometimes to connect how, like, okay, taking the garbage out means you love me. But for some people, like, those things are so stressful for them. And it takes a lot of their burden away. And relieving somebody's stress, I think, is a very valuable thing. So, like, the acts of service love language is more for that. I think you also have to be careful, though, who you're giving the acts of service love language to, because some people, and I've been in this position myself in the past, will feel like if you try to do something for them, it's almost a slight, like you don't believe that they can do it. So I've made that mistake before.
You have to know their personality.
Exactly. So this is why it's so important to know who you're dealing with and what their love language is. Know yours, know what you need, and be able to express what you need. But figure out the love languages of people around you and make sure that you can switch.
Yeah, on the acts of service, I feel like I do a lot of acts of service, and I'm very receptive to acts of service too. One example that I thought of just now was that my Aunt Lynn is my godmother, and she's awesome. Anybody that knows me knows my Aunt Lynn.
She made a cameo in our last podcast, and if you haven't yet listened, you should.
So my Aunt Lynn, one of the things that is like my Aunt Lynn's love language is acts of service. When I wake up in the morning, she'll be like, do you mind if I like wake you up instead of your alarm? Because she just doesn't like the idea of the alarm, and she likes being that person. Oh, get up. It's a new day. So like that kind of stuff is her act of service. And because I'd rather have someone talk to me and say good morning from like the next bed over than, have an alarm beeping in my face, like that's something that I just kind of do. Does that make sense? Like that's like a very basic act of service, but it's
Absolutely.
like, yeah, it's something that I can tell, like she really enjoys not being reliant on the technology part of it all. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to wake up anyway. Tiny act of service.
Cool. Well, you know what? We all have a least proficient one. And I feel like, it didn't come up this way, but I feel like acts of service, while I understand it, I'm less proficient in using it than I am with some of the others. Even though gifts came up the lowest, I feel like I'm more proficient in being able to put together a meaningful gift for somebody than I am of figuring out like what chore they want me to help with. So that's probably my least proficient in speaking. Yeah, so I mean, we all have a least proficient love language, a most proficient, and it might be a different love language that you receive and that you give love in. Another thing I wanted to mention was knowing what to avoid with people in each love language. So I had a list. I was researching it before. Because of course I was researching it because hashtag nerd Ravenclaw. So, the most hurtful things to people of each love languages. I can definitely attest to, I agree with the quality time ones. And you guys, if I touch on one of your other, I know we all had quality time high, but if I touch on one of your other main ones, tell me what you think if you agree. So, most hurtful things to do for quality time individuals. Being distracted the whole time you're with somebody. So, being with somebody but being on your phone or something. Not showing up when you say you're going to show up. So, making a plan and then not being there or canceling at the last minute. Postponing activities. Sometimes there's a good reason for that, but just postponing activities because you forgot to check your schedule or something. Not prioritizing your time together. So making the person feel like they are not a priority. Your time is not a priority. That's a big one. And also failure to listen. So listening just to correct rather than listening to listen.
Or not calling when you say you're going to call or whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of not showing up, postponing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do agree that, if you tell me you're going to show up and you don't, that's one of the most hurtful things to me. Okay, acts of service. Most hurtful things to acts of service. Broken commitments, which I guess that one kind of lines up with the quality time. But commitments to doing something. So if you say, I'm gonna fix this, I'm gonna work on this, not doing it is a problem for them. Making more work for them. So doing something that causes them to have to work harder. And failure to follow through. on something you say you're going to do. Those are the most hurtful things for an acts of service individual. For a touch individual, lack of physical presence, which, is not always within someone's control. If you're in a long distance friendship or relationship, like all of us are, none of us are in the same room right now. If you can't physically be there, if you can physically be there and you choose not to, that is hurtful to a touch individual. Neglect. Physical abuse is actually one of the biggest ones because they use touch as love. So if you turn touch into hate for them, that is the worst thing. And refusal of touch. Like if they go to hug you and you're like, no. Those are the most hurtful things for touch individuals. Words of affirmation individuals, lack of acknowledgement of something that they've worked hard on. Insults, non-constructive criticism, and discouraging or insensitive remarks. And for gifts, absence of everyday gestures. Not necessarily gifts, but like everyday gestures. Like every day I do this thing. One of the biggest things is like missed birthdays or missed gift days. Thoughtless gifts. So like, here's a regift. Somebody gave me a candle. Here you go. Kind of thing like that. Or unenthusiastic receiving of gifts. So if somebody gives you a gift and you're like, oh, cool, thanks. And you just like throw it to the side. That's one of the most hurtful things for gift people. What do you guys think of? Do you agree, disagree with what you personally understand or what you know of other people to understand?
I agree with your list, what you said. I think it makes sense.
Okay.
Definitely like what you said for quality time. It's home. And with the physical touch too, yeah. Like I hadn't even thought of turning that into like, abuse like that. Oh my God, that would be terrible. Turning that to physical violence.
Well, and of course, physical abuse is horrible for everyone, but for someone whose love language is touch, it adds an extra weight.
I want to just, again, reiterate that physical abuse is awful to any love language. Nobody deserves to be abused physically, emotionally, psychologically, otherwise.
And we're not condoning it for the other love languages at all. Not at all.
Jeez, no. I wanted to I heard neglect and my radar went off and I'm like, no, not okay in any love language.
Absolutely.
Ever. I just noticed that I picked and chose things that bothered me from all of them, which was very strange.
Okay. What did you notice?
One thing that popped out to me was in quality time, one of the things that bothers people the most is listening, but just listening. But for me, one of the things that bothers me the most is I'm a fixer. And sometimes I legitimately can't just listen without trying to come up with a solution. And I know that I don't know where that falls in a love language, but for me, it's physically draining and demanding to sometimes listen and not try to fix. And I understand that in situations I've done it because I know it's important to the individual or individuals I'm with. But that's actually almost an act of service.
I was just going to say that, Kayla, because you're trying to figure out how to solve the problem for somebody and to make it better to address them or help their situation.
Yeah, that's speaking acts of service.
I totally agree that it's an act of service. Definitely.
Yeah. Which makes me believe that I actually am more of an act of service giver than anything else, I'd say.
Cool. Were there any other things that jumped out to you?
The gifts one I agreed with but didn't agree with, because when I give someone a tiny gift or if they are super busy that day and they're just oh, thank you, but they don't do a ton of stuff, then it's totally fine for me. But if I put a lot of thought into one, then I'm really hurt. So I think that that's another. Receiving quality time and receiving words of affirmation are my thing, but giving gifts and giving acts of service are my other things. So that's what popped out to me the most, is that I have two very divergent giving and receiving qualities that pop out. None of which is physical touch. It's hilarious.
It's okay.
It's
everybody has a least proficient.
Listeners, I do if I'm really, really upset or if someone's upset, I give good hugs. My whole family is famous for giving good hugs. And I do really like holding hands with someone I really care about, but it has to be the interlaced way, otherwise you're just kind of cheating. But I noticed it's just so interesting to think about. I'm not sure if you guys thought the same way or if you're giving and receiving are very similar to one another. So you just have the same two that are strong, or if you
That's interesting. For me, I think that I do give and receive quality time well. Quality time is definitely my biggest receiving. In terms of giving, I mean, I do that when I can. I'm good at words of affirmation giving, I think.
Yeah.
I'm good at expressing to people that I appreciate them. I can be good at gifts, I guess. Yeah, sometimes I'm good at gifts, I think.
The more I think about this, the more I call into question, the results of the test and the overall questions and structure. I don't know if we're just being too analytical. I'm sorry. That's how my brain is. I work in analytics. Can't help it. I research data and I write reports. So I'm just trained to think that way. I'm interested to see if there's another quiz out there that's structured differently that deals on this topic. Because this one, who was the author of this survey? Was it the author of the book?
Gary Chapman.
No. So he did the survey as well.
The whole thing is trademarked. It's Gary Chapman's thing. I'm pretty sure he did the survey, because the survey is also in the back of this book here. I did this maybe about 2 years ago, year and a half ago.
You just took it today, too, right? You took the online one today, correct?
I took the online one today, and this is my results from 2 years ago inside this book.
Great. So did you notice if the questions online were the same as the ones in the book?
They are similar. I think they have different ones a little bit.
So they're just worded differently, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I would venture to guess that the book is maybe a little more accurate. Because looking at it, it has things like, my husband's praise means a lot to me. That's just saying I'm words of affirmation, or just being around my husband makes me feel good. That's saying I'm a quality time person. Like, these are more specific, saying like that you're just one thing or the other. The ones in the online quiz were a little more, they had too many details, but it's interesting because it is similar. Like, no matter where I take it, quality time is way above the rest.
The online version, in my mind, was more like an either-or situation, very much like a comparison.
Yeah.
And if I were to design a survey for this, I would design questions that would have choices for each love language to be an answer, match up with each love language.
That's interesting.
More sense. Like, which of the statements do you agree with the most? And then, you'd list, I love spending quality time with my husband. I love hugs better. I am more inclined to do an active service, blah, 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 blah. Something like that. And then at the end, you tally up and be like, okay, most of my answers are geared toward quality time or physical touch or blah, 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 blah. It's just more straightforward.
This is more straightforward. The book is a little bit more straightforward. It just has 2 at a time. So it's like, okay, rate quality time and touch. Okay, now rate touch and acts of service. Now rate acts of service and words of affirmation. It just does it that way.
I need to say something real quick to listeners, just all of you out there. When I was in college, I worked at the Marist Institute of Public Opinion, and I took multiple classes on survey research and design and polling questionnaires, and one of my concentrations was public opinion. So I'm very much into all this stuff, and I'm not really just talking out of my ass, so to speak.
Of course you're not.
I off, what I've learned, so to speak, in terms of survey design and research methods.
Cool.
And okay, I'll shut up now.
No, I agree with you, Marissa. Like, I was thinking about, and I'm not sure if I'm saying the same, even statistically speaking, like how many different combinations, the quiz as it's set up right now, listeners, is you're only choosing between 2 of the love languages at a time. So I never know, like, say if I have one that gifts versus quality time, there'd be one that would be clearly a little bit ahead of the other, but then it's better to have all of them lined up, because then you're just comparing one to the other, and how many different combinations really are those? Your score has to be affected by that.
That's why
it's
not accurate in my mind, because there are 3 other possibilities that are not listed there if you're only doing a comparison between 2. We could be looking at a question, and then you could think, well, I don't really agree with either of these answers. I'm being pigeonholed into choosing one when really my answer isn't there, and it should be.
Right.
I swear there has to be like a disclaimer for me at the beginning or end of this episode that says, like, no, seriously, Kayla does like hugs sometimes, and she's not opposed to holding hands, but like physical touch is my outlier. Like, if you've ever been with me at a party and you've been slightly inebriated and you go up to me and you're like, I love you, I'm always like, you'll notice that, like, I'll freeze up. I'm like, yeah, you too, but why are you touching me right now?
Well, I mean, that's why generally, and I know there are times when I've hugged you and you weren't really appreciative of it, but generally...
But you worked really hard not to do it, or...
Yeah, like, generally I ask, I'm like, can I hug you?
Like, but Chelsea will actually say, like, if I'm really upset, there are times that I'm like, I just want to run it out, and I just want you to tell me that I'm, like, strong and badass and everything, and that's what I want, words of affirmation. And then there are other times when I actually want a hug. So when Chelsea's like, would you like a hug? I know she actually is saying it in like, do I actually want one? And sometimes I say no, but maybe later. And you're fine with it.
Yeah. Touch is not my primary one, but I definitely am fluent in touch, I guess. And I feel like, I don't know why, but the majority of the men that I have dated in the past have been touch. In fact, I'm looking at this book right now, and I have my ex-boyfriend's results in here because I made him take it like 2 years ago. And it's very highly touch. Yeah. So, but I've dated many touch people, and that's actually an interesting one, because what do you do if you are in a situation where you physically cannot provide one of these love languages? Because that is one of the things that this is reminding me of. The person I made take this, I was actually in a long distance relationship with. So, saying things like, you can talk about, I would like to give you a hug right now, or you can talk about, or you can send them something physical to hold, like send them like a sweatshirt so they can like actually like feel like they're holding you. Something like that. If you're in a situation where like maybe you can't provide touch, you can't provide acts of service, or something like that, what would you do? You can't physically be in the same room, so it's harder to provide quality time.
I have a lot of friends all over the place, and I feel like just coincidentally, a lot of them are words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time people. I don't know why, just coincidentally they are. But I feel like I rely heavily on acts of service and words of affirmation and gifts when I can't necessarily spend the quality time. Like I think about the quality time I spent with the person and then use that in order to send them words or gifts or an act that would be applicable to their personality.
You know, quality time can be a focused phone conversation.
Yes.
So I think that's important too. Knowing that you can provide it without being there, even for like a touch person, which I would say is the hardest, you can mention, well, I'm happy that you're having a good day and I would love to give you a hug. Even sometimes saying that makes a difference.
Have either of you been in a relationship with someone, whether it be like a family member or a friend or a romantic relationship, where the person that you're interacting with has a love language that's your least love language quality? I feel like this, I feel like we've kind of touched upon this, like Chelsea, you mentioned like the acts of service and how like given at a certain time and place and with a certain person, it can be misconstrued. And I feel like the same thing happens to me in like physical touch. Like my family is like super, super huggy.
Yeah, you're the least huggy of your family.
I am. I just have to come with a disclaimer. I don't dislike all hugs. It's kind of like I don't like Frosty the Snowman, but I like snowmen. If I haven't seen someone in forever, I'll give them like a huge hug because I've missed them so much. Or if someone really needs me and they're really upset, I'll give them a huge hug so they can like cry on my shoulder. Someone like did something amazing, like they got their PhD, I'll be like, congratulations, and give them a hug. But I'm not that person that'll just be like, you smiled pretty at me, hug. Every hug I give has a purpose, comfort or happy, or that's how I feel about it. So sometimes it's really difficult for me to interact with people who are more likely to just display physical touch as their love language just in everyday life.
I don't think I would say that I have trouble interacting with any of them per se, because, you know, I see qualities of me in all of them. But with words of affirmation, for me, I need more than just that. Like, I need to be able to spend quality time with you. We need to be able to be together physically, doing something, or just doing nothing, but be in the same space. Have a phone call or a Skype call or something. And then also, I also require physical touch. I am probably the antithesis of Kayla because I love hugs, and I'm a very like friendly, open, and bubbly person. And I talk to pretty much everybody. And, you know, if I like you, sooner or later you're going to get a hug. And
to clarify, Kayla is also friendly and open. She's just not a hugger.
Thank you.
I know. I just wanted to say that to all of our listeners who don't know Kayla.
Chelsea. I know Kayla is a lovely person who just doesn't like hugs. That's fine.
We love her anyway.
I like crisp high fives.
Back to the physical touch, not just with the hug. I like the romance. I don't like, how shall I say? I like the hand holding. I like the hugs. It has to be romantic, and it has to be right, and it has to be appropriate. Just so back to answer your question, Kayla, just words of affirmation, while they're nice, aren't sufficient for me.
I think it was mentioned briefly, but I went through like I've been going through a rough couple weeks, and Chelsea was nice enough she compiled this whole like care package for me, but it was dark chocolates and good stuff, but it also had a book and a list of qualities she liked about me, which for someone who's a huge words of affirmation person, like that meant so much. Whereas if someone, like people have come up to me and given me the hug and said, I'm so sorry, like I appreciate their gesture because I know it's coming from the right place. But the fact that Chelsea was like, you're a badass, you're awesome, you're going to get through this. I was like, yeah, I am. And that was more encouraging to me than a hug.
And that's just how you perceive things because it's your love language.
And like Chelsea was the student to use my love language to help me through it.
Yay, Chelsea.
Yay, Chelsea. Ooh. But like, did you think about that? You probably did.
I did actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. Because the book that I bought her was called You Are a Badass. Good book. Check it out. And I wrote a list of things why she specifically is a badass. And there were like shirts with affirmation quotes on them. Yeah, I did think about that because I know that one of the things that you respond to when you're going through a hard time is words of encouragement. Like, you're great at this. You're gonna be amazing. You're gonna get through this. So,
which makes sense as to why I always liked being coached in sports.
Yeah.
Cause like I responded to like, even if it was like a constructive criticism type thing, like I respond to words of affirmation, which is another reason why I'm thinking like this quiz might have gotten me a little wrong. And I think I'm definitely words of affirmation. And then
I personally think you're words of affirmation.
And then acts of service for what I give back.
You also give good gifts too. Like you give very thoughtful, well thought out gifts too.
I try.
Well, the better you know someone, the more you can accurately speak their language. So if they are a gift person, or even if they're not, even if that's just like a way that you express it to them, you can get them something meaningful instead of, here's a coffee mug and a scented candle. You know, like, although actually for some people, I enjoy coffee mugs and scented candles, but you know.
Yeah. Example.
Something that's just generic.
I've also though, like there are times that this is very, very funny. Like Chelsea mentioned scented candle, and I'm a circular thinker, so this is just how I think. And I tried to think of a time when I was upset over gifts. Now, if someone gives me a gift that like maybe isn't exactly my personality, but you can tell like they really took time to do, like I'll be thrilled with any gift. But then there are people that will give me gifts that I've known them for a while, and it's something that I truly dislike, or like giving me a pineapple when I'm allergic to it.
Remember that?
Where like as a gift person, I'm like, WTF, mate? Like, you know.
I remember that. Yes, for those listening, a friend of ours, once came to a party we had and gave Kayla a pineapple. She is deathly allergic to pineapples. I'm not sure if he knew this and forgot, or he just...
For this particular individual's, I don't think he knew that I was allergic. But I just use that as an example. But there have been times where, like, I've told someone in my family, an obscure aunt or uncle, that people know that I really don't like clowns, and I would get, like, a clown blanket. And I'm like, really? You're like, not only, like, do you not get me, like you really don't get me.
Yeah, that's like the worst thing to get you ever.
Yeah, I know. That or like a collector's edition DVD of Frosty the Snowman, like I would hate it.
Unless it's like ironic and it's funny.
Oh, if it was ironically given, I would be like, props to you for your sense of humor.
I feel like your uncle would do that.
Oh, that's something my Uncle John would absolutely do. He'd be like, this is for you. He'd give me like a birthday present that's like all things that were like comically things I disliked.
But I mean, it was also, in a sense, that is also thinking of you. That's thinking of you to make a joke. So that does fit the love language of gifts.
But I think we've all gotten those gifts where like you look down and you're like, oh.
You're like, huh?
I will say that I think I've been pretty lucky on the receiving end of the gifts. I can't really think of a terrible gift I received.
And honestly, like listeners, I can count on like one hand the amount of times that I've been truly like, oh my God, what is this gift? And most of them, it's from that like random family member who only sees you once a year and they just tried, and you still like appreciate the fact that they tried, but they just kind of were like,
Might I suggest, if you are giving a gift to somebody you don't know, go gift card. Just always go gift card.
Gift cards get a bad rap, but honestly, I know people
they're great
who prefer them because then they can take it and buy whatever they want.
Me.
If you know someone's favorite store or whatever, that makes it even better. Like, for example, a lot of my friends love to read. So giving a gift card to Barnes & Noble doesn't scream like, oh my God, I don't know what to buy you. It's like, oh, I know you love reading. I don't know what book you haven't read yet. Here's a gift card for whatever amount. Go buy a book and have fun. Like,
I was just going to say, I don't know if you knew this. Both of you got me a gift card to Barnes & Noble for my birthday. And I love it. Yeah. Because Barnes & Noble's the best.
I did the gift card and the mental health charity.
Yeah, I had a fundraiser for Mental Health America because it was Mental Health Awareness Month. As seen on episode 3, if you have not yet listened. How about this? Let's give an idea for doing something meaningful for a person of each love language.
Oh, can we each do that? We can do it.
So if you are dealing with a words of affirmation person, one cool thing you can do for them is, aside from, always saying what you appreciate about them, making them a playlist of songs with lyrics that say how you feel about them. So if you think they're a strong, tough person who can get through this, make them a playlist of that. If you love them, and if it's like a significant other that you love and you feel like your life has always brought you back to them, make a playlist that says that. The lyrics often can serve as words of affirmation. For acts of service, one of the things that you can do to help them is figure out what chore they dread the most and take over that for them. So if they're somebody who, like me, although I'm not an acts of service person, but like me, I'm not good at doing dishes. Kayla can tell you this. Kayla lived with me for 3 years. So if you are dealing with an acts of service person who is like me, say they hate doing dishes, do the dishes for them. Or, get their car taken in for a tune-up or something. For a gifts person, one cool thing you can do is make the most of unusual holidays. Look up unusual holidays and come up with, silly reasons to give them gifts. Like, today is Taco Day, so I ordered you tacos and had them delivered to your house.
I love that idea.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so, come up with, an unusual holiday.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's National Taco Day, so here's Mexican delivery to your house that I paid for already. That would be a cool gift.
That's magical.
For a quality time person, a cool thing you could do is find a project to work on together. Because you're going to be spending all this time together. If you're both musical people, say, we're going to work on recording something together. That would be cool. Or if you're both literary people, say, we're going to do a book club together. Come up with something that you have in common and set a weekly time that you do it together. And that makes a more meaningful version of your quality time. If you are a touch person, something that you can do other than the obvious is maybe take a ballroom dance class together. Because that is an activity you do together, so it's kind of quality time, but it's also you're touching each other. You're holding each other in different ways. You're learning different ways to move together. And that would be meaningful to somebody who is a touch person. So those are a few of the ideas I had for one thing for each love language that you could do. What are your thoughts?
Those are really good.
Yeah, they're very good.
Chelsea mentioned quality time, and I feel like I don't want to say that's the easiest one, but I feel like that's the one that could kind of bleed into other ones. Kind of like you mentioned, dance class could be quality time as well as physical touch. But for example, my friend Joanna, one of our guest hosts before, Joanna and I have Wine Wednesday every Wednesday. And if we can't do it on Wednesday, we do another day during that week where we meet up. And it ensures that we have that time to talk and exchange ideas and everything. I think for a gift person, something that's fun, I can't speak for the gentlemen who are listening, but I know for the ladies that are listening, at least for me and a lot of my close friends, getting a gift for the group that everybody can use together, or getting similar bracelets, or getting, cool. I know I'm 30, but matching t-shirts at a place. That's kind of fun for a gift person. But that kind of gift giving is fun, as well as I think for a gift for someone whose love language is gifts, whether it's their receiving language or their giving language, just make sure you put thought into it. It's never about just giving them a rose. For me, I'd be much more excited if someone gave me a bouquet of lantanas, which I know is difficult because they tend to be very rooty. Mm-hmm. But if someone gave me a lantana plant, I would feel that's a better gift than a bouquet of roses, because lantanas have a cool meaning. And I'm, words of affirmation, all that. Yeah, make sure there's meaning behind your gifts. It's not just about here, honey, here's a Poland Spring water bottle because you just ran and you look thirsty. You know,
yeah,
it's more than that. Yeah, for words of affirmation, I feel like it's not just, you know, saying I love you and saying I care about you. It's also saying specific things, like, not to go back to like the care package Chelsea sent me, but she didn't just send me a book that said you're a badass. She sent me a book with a list of reasons why I need to believe that I am. So like, it's all about specificity, I think, with
I wrote in the cover,
yeah, with words of affirmation. It's, you know, it's not just I love you, it's I love you because you always take the time to listen to me, even if you're tired and you haven't slept in hours. Like, you know, that kind of stuff. Like adding specificity. Acts of service, I like yours where you choose someone's least favorite chore and you just do it for them. But I think even making someone's life easier in any capacity can be an act of service, as well as sharing in an act of service with someone. Like, if you know someone loves to give back, like saying, why don't we do community outreach together? Or, you know, I noticed that the town is doing a can drive. Do you want to help me with that? Like that kind of service too. Like that really, really appeals to me. Physical touch. For someone like me who that might not be my love language, I would just make sure that when I'm in the presence and the company of people who are physical touch, love language people, then just letting them know that, like, you know, when I give someone a hug and then saying, like, when I hug you, I want you to know that I do truly care. Like making sure that they know that, like, kind of like you mentioned before, like in a long distance relationship, I'd really want to hug you right now, or just like making sure that the idea and reasoning behind everything that you do has that meaning. And so I think the theme of all of mine is specificity, just making sure that you're doing it based on like where you're coming from your heart, from your head, from your friendship, from where their backgrounds and your backgrounds are. It can't just be an empty hug or an empty word or an empty gift or an empty, like a text messaging written time together, or I threw your sock in the laundry basket because you dropped it again. Like, it has to be something that comes from the heart. Yeah.
All right, Marissa, you're up. Yes.
I'm going to say, like, for touch, a hug for no reason. You know, that's something I would appreciate. And someone who I think is you know, huge on physical touch would like that too. For quality time, I would say doing the other person's favorite activity, even if it's something that you particularly don't care for, because I think that shows that you want to spend so much time with them that you're willing to basically do whatever it is in order to be together. For acts of service, I answered doing a chore that stresses them the most.
Mm-hmm.
For words of affirmation, I said writing a poem or a short story or a song for the person to let them know you're thinking about them. And for gifts, just basically I said like giving a gift for no reason, like just to show a token of affection. Doesn't have to be anything huge, just like something small to let them know you're thinking about them.
And I think like all of us touched upon this, but just, I think that these tests, whether it's a love languages test or a personality test, they're really meant to make you more self-aware and aware of others around you. So all of these can be applied to every single individual. Like I said, there are days that I truly do need a hug and will appreciate and welcome you with open arms, quite literally and figuratively speaking. And then other days that I just want to run 4 miles until I'm done crying and then come home and have someone give me chocolate cake. Like, so like, it's very, very different. And there's no set doctrine that says how these should be used all the time, because there's no set individual human that determines how all these should be used. But it's all about self-awareness and learning how to love those around you in the truest and most selfless type of way while still loving yourself.
I love you guys.
We love you too.
And how am I going to express my love according to the love languages? Let's see. Well, I will express words of affirmation because we're on a podcast. Okay. And I can tell you that Kayla, you are strong and you are there for everybody in your life. And you are a solid, amazing person who has a lot going for her and a lot of intelligence and talents, and you're awesome and you're there for everybody. And Marissa, I can tell you that you are likewise a very strong individual.
Thank you.
And you are a good hugger. And you are very honest. And you are very strong.
Mhm.
And you are a good barometer of truth and morals and things like that. And you are also very intelligent, like all of us, because why else would we have a podcast called The Sapio Files if we were not into intelligence and knowledge? And you're all musical, like we found out on last week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I love you guys.
We love you too.
So that is my words of affirmation for you guys.
Thank you.
That's the one I can most readily express on this podcast. We have spent quality time. We've spent a lot of quality time recording this.
Yes, we do.
We have given each other gifts before, good gifts.
Mm-hmm.
We have done things for each other when we were in hard times.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely say that, Kay, especially, you know, when we lived together, you've been there through some of my really hard times, and you've done things for me that made it easier. So that's an act of service.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad.
You have.
I tried real hard.
And which one didn't I touch on? I did quality time, words of affirmation, gifts, acts of service, and touch. And touch. So, you know, Mercy, you're a great hugger, and Kay, even though it's not your favorite thing, you are able to give hugs when the person you are talking to needs it. So that's an important thing for being there for somebody else. So thank you guys for using all the love languages effectively. And thank you to the listeners for listening to us. And hopefully this will shed some light on how you can improve your relationships in your life and love the people around you. Just like we love all of you for listening to us.
All right.
All right.
Yes, we do. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, over and out.
Thanks for joining us again this week for our Love Languages edition of the Sapio Files. If you would like to join the conversation and maybe tell us a little bit about your love languages, you can email us at sapiofilespodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at the Sapio Files, or leave us a comment and rate us wherever you listen to this podcast. Have a great week, show your love, and stay curious.